Think for a moment. In a world saturated with noise, constant notifications, opinions competing for attention, and an endless demand for expression, what if the greatest truth was never meant to be spoken aloud? Imagine that the most transformative teachings of Jesus were not delivered primarily through sermons, commandments, or even miracles, but through something far more demanding, subtle, and powerful: silence. Not silence as the absence of sound, but silence as a living presence, a sacred inner state that awakens the soul. Imagine that within this silence lies a hidden path capable of transforming how you understand God, consciousness, and your own inner nature. Remain here, because the final revelation of this journey is the most important and powerful of all, and it will challenge the foundations of how spirituality is commonly understood. When most people think of Jesus, they imagine a teacher who spoke in parables, addressed crowds, and challenged religious authorities with words. Yet beneath the surface of the canonical narratives, and echoed through mystical traditions passed from generation to generation, there exists another image of Jesus. Jesus, the silent mystic, a man who frequently withdrew from society, who chose silence at decisive moments, and who embodied a wisdom that transcended language itself. This dimension of his path has been preserved not only in Scripture, but also in esoteric Christianity, Hermetic philosophy, and the contemplative traditions that valued inner transformation over outward display. This video invites you to step beyond the familiar image and explore the mystical path of silence that Jesus lived, transmitted, and embodied. A path not intended for spectacle, but for inner awakening. A path that does not shout, but whispers to those who are prepared to listen with the heart rather than the ears. The silence of Jesus was not passive. It was intentional, disciplined, and deeply transformative. It was the ground from which his words emerged, and the refuge to which he constantly returned. Before we continue, if you feel drawn to exploring hidden wisdom, ancient spiritual truths, and teachings capable of reshaping how you experience life and the universe, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this message with those who walk a similar path, and write a comment below. What does silence represent in your own spiritual journey? Stay with us until the very end, because the revelations ahead may profoundly alter how you perceive existence, faith, and yourself. In mystical traditions across cultures, silence has always been understood as a gateway rather than a void. In the Hebrew spiritual worldview, silence is associated with awe, reverence, and deep trust in the divine. The Psalms speak of waiting in silence before God, not as inactivity but as surrender. Jesus, formed within this spiritual environment, embodied silence not as a concept, but as a lived discipline. The Gospels repeatedly describe him withdrawing from crowds, retreating into the wilderness, ascending mountains alone, and praying in solitude during the early hours of the morning. These moments are not narrative coincidences. They are spiritual signals, invitations to recognize where true authority and clarity are born. The desert, in particular, holds immense mystical significance. After his baptism, Jesus does not immediately begin teaching or gathering followers. He enters silence. 40 days and 40 nights away from distraction, identity, and social affirmation. In mystical symbolism, the desert represents the stripping away of illusion. It is where the false self dissolves and the essential self is revealed. Scholars such as Thomas Merton and Evelyn Underhill emphasize that genuine spiritual authority arises not from accumulation of knowledge, but from the surrender of ego. In silence, the layers of false identity fall away. Jesus emerges from the desert not louder, not more aggressive, but more aligned with divine will. Silence is deeply unsettling because it confronts us with ourselves. Carl Jung observed that people will do almost anything, no matter how irrational, to avoid facing their own soul. Silence removes all escape routes. When Jesus stands silent before Pilate, refusing to defend himself, we witness not weakness, but mastery. Esoteric Christian interpretations suggest that this silence was an initiation, a demonstration that truth does not need justification. Power rooted in the eternal does not react. It simply remains. Why would Jesus choose silence when words could potentially save him? This question opens a doorway into mystical understanding. Silence in this context is alignment with a higher law. Hermetic teachings affirm that the Logos, the divine word, emerges from the eternal silence of the Absolute. To return to silence is to return to the source of all creation. Jesus, identified in the Gospel of John as the Logos made flesh, understood that speaking from ego fractures truth, while silence preserves its integrity. Now reflect inwardly. How often do you seek answers through noise, endless information, and external voices? What if the path you are searching for cannot be found through accumulation, but through subtraction, through stillness rather than stimulation? Jesus did not merely recommend silence. He lived it as a spiritual technology, a method of awakening consciousness and aligning the human with the divine. And this is only the threshold. As we move forward, we will explore how silence functions as initiation, how it reshapes perception, and why some of the most sacred teachings of Jesus were never meant for the masses, but for those willing to listen beyond sound. Ask yourself now, with complete honesty, are you prepared to enter that silence? Silence, on the mystical path of Jesus, is not merely preparation for revelation. It is revelation itself. To truly understand this, we must move beyond the surface reading of the Gospels and enter the symbolic and initiatory language in which they were written. Many early Christian mystics understood that Jesus taught on two levels simultaneously. One level was accessible through words, parables, and moral instruction. The other level was transmitted through presence, gesture, withdrawal, and silence. This deeper level was not meant to be explained openly, because it could only be realized inwardly. Consider how often Jesus speaks in ways that conceal as much as they reveal. He tells his disciples that to some, everything is given in parables, so that seeing they may not see and hearing they may not hear. This is not cruelty but precision. Silence functions as a veil that protects sacred knowledge from being reduced to concepts. Esoteric Christianity holds that divine truth loses its transformative power when grasped only by the intellect. Silence safeguards mystery so it can ripen within the soul. In the Gospel accounts, there are moments when Jesus deliberately withdraws after performing miracles. He does not allow crowds to cling to the spectacle. Instead, he disappears into solitude. This pattern reveals an essential principle of mystical development. Experiences, even sacred ones, must be followed by silence to be integrated. Without silence, spiritual experience becomes addiction, and wisdom turns into vanity. Scholars such as Meister Eckhart taught that God is found not in multiplicity, but in the ground of the soul, a place beyond images, beyond words, beyond form. Jesus lived from this ground. There is a profound teaching hidden in the way Jesus listens. He listens to the accused, to the sick, to those rejected by society. He does not rush to answer. His pauses are deliberate. Silence creates space, and space allows truth to surface organically. In mystical psychology, this space is where transformation occurs. Carl Jung described this as the container, the psychic vessel that allows unconscious material to rise without being distorted by reaction. Jesus instinctively created this vessel through silence. One of the most striking examples of this is the encounter with the woman accused of adultery. The crowd demands judgment. They demand words, condemnation, clarity. Jesus responds with silence. He bends down and writes on the ground. Scripture does not tell us what he writes because the content is irrelevant. The act itself is the teaching. In that silence, the crowd is forced to confront itself. One by one, they leave. Silence dissolves collective aggression. Words would have only fueled it. From a Hermetic perspective, silence corresponds to the feminine receptive principle of creation. It is the womb from which the word is born. Ancient wisdom teaches that all manifestation arises from stillness. Jesus embodies this cosmic rhythm. He speaks only when speech serves alignment, never when it serves ego. This is why his words carry such enduring power. They are not reactions, they are emanations. Now turn this inward. How often do you speak to fill discomfort? How often do you seek certainty rather than truth? Silence reveals what noise conceals. It exposes fear, attachment, and illusion, but it also reveals intuition, presence, and divine guidance. This is why silence feels threatening to the unprepared mind. It removes the masks. Mystical traditions teach that silence is initiatory because it dismantles the false self. In prolonged silence, identities collapse. Roles lose meaning. What remains is awareness itself, Jesus invited his closest followers into this inner desert, but few could remain there. Even his disciples frequently misunderstood him, seeking power, status, and certainty. Silence requires surrender, and surrender cannot be forced. As we continue, we will explore why silence was considered dangerous by religious authorities, how it threatens systems built on control, and why Jesus' silent authority was more revolutionary than his spoken words. Reflect deeply before we proceed. Can you remain present without explanation? Can you listen without immediately responding? The silence embodied by Jesus was not only a personal spiritual discipline, it was a radical force that unsettled every structure built on fear, hierarchy, and control. Religious systems depend on interpretation, on authority mediated through words, laws, and rituals. Silence bypasses all of that. It cannot be regulated, taxed, or owned. This is why the silent presence of Jesus was far more threatening than his teachings. His stillness exposed the emptiness behind performative piety and external obedience. When Jesus retreats from public life, he is not escaping responsibility. He is reclaiming sovereignty of consciousness. Mystical scholars such as Henri Nouwen observe that withdrawal is not rejection of the world, but refusal to be possessed by it. In silence, Jesus remained inwardly free. This inner freedom made him immune to manipulation, praise, or intimidation. Authorities could not negotiate with silence. They could not trap it in doctrine. They could only attempt to eliminate it. This explains why Jesus often instructed those he healed not to speak of it. On the surface, this appears contradictory. Why hide miracles? On a mystical level, the answer is clear. Publicity feeds the ego and distracts from inner transformation. Silence protects the sacred from becoming spectacle. The early Desert Fathers understood this deeply. They taught that the soul grows in secrecy, just as seeds germinate underground. Exposure too early weakens the process. There is also a profound psychological dimension to Jesus' silence. Modern depth psychology reveals that transformation does not occur through constant explanation, but through sustained awareness. Jung emphasized that insight alone is not enough. The psyche requires space to reorganize itself. Silence provides that space. When Jesus remains silent in moments of accusation or chaos, he is allowing the unconscious material of others to surface. People reveal themselves when no one rushes to fill the gap. Notice how silence shifts power. The one who speaks is often reacting. The one who remains silent observes. Jesus' silence was never avoidance. It was mastery of inner center. This is why his presence alone unsettled those around him. He did not need to dominate conversations or defend his identity. His authority came from alignment, not assertion. This path of silence is deeply connected to the concept of the kingdom of God. Jesus repeatedly states that the kingdom is not coming with observable signs, that it is within. Silence is the doorway inward. Noise pulls attention outward. The mystical kingdom cannot be accessed through belief alone, but through direct inner perception. Silence sharpens this perception. It trains awareness to rest in being rather than becoming. Hermetic philosophy teaches that the human being is a bridge between the visible and invisible worlds. Silence strengthens that bridge. In silence, intuition becomes audible. Guidance arises without force. Jesus trusted this inner guidance completely. He did not act from impulse but from attunement. This is why his actions appear precise, even inevitable. Silence aligned him with the deeper currents of existence. Now consider how radically this contrasts with modern life. Constant stimulation fragments attention. Noise prevents integration. Many seek spiritual truth while remaining terrified of stillness. Yet the path Jesus walked demands courage, because silence dismantles illusion. It strips away borrowed identities and inherited beliefs. What remains is raw presence. This is why silence was transmitted only to those prepared. Not everyone wants truth. Many want reassurance. Silence offers neither comfort nor certainty. It offers reality. Jesus never forced this path. He invited. He withdrew when crowds misunderstood. He spoke plainly only to those who had tasted stillness. As we approach the final part, we will uncover the deepest layer of this path. Why silence is not the absence of God, but the place where God is most fully encountered. Why the final teaching of Jesus was not spoken at all, and why entering silence is not withdrawal from life, but the beginning of true participation in it. Reflect carefully before we proceed. Are you willing to let go of noise, explanation, and control? At the deepest and most misunderstood level of the mystical path, silence is no longer something you practice as a discipline, a method, or a temporary retreat from the world. Silence becomes what you are. This is the threshold where the teachings of Jesus move beyond ethics, beyond theology, beyond spirituality as a concept, and enter the realm of being itself. The final and most powerful truth of this path is not found in explanations, doctrines, or even sacred texts, but in the way Jesus inhabited existence. His silence was not a pause between words, nor a refusal to communicate. It was the living ground from which all authentic presence, compassion, and truth naturally emerged. In the final moments of his life, this truth reaches its most radical and uncompromising expression. On the cross, Jesus speaks very little. There is no attempt to justify himself, no effort to defend his mission, no desire to persuade those watching. There is no sermon, no theology, no clarification. What remains is pure presence, stripped of narrative, stripped of identity, stripped of control. Mystical theologians such as John of the Cross, Meister Eckhart, and later contemplative scholars understood this moment not as defeat, but as consummation. When language collapses, union begins. When the mind can no longer explain, the soul finally rests in what is. The cry uttered by Jesus has often been interpreted as despair, abandonment, or doubt. From the mystical perspective, however, it represents something far deeper and far more transformative. It marks the dissolution of the separate self, the final surrender of identity, story, role, and psychological attachment. Even the image of God as something external dissolves. What follows is silence. Not emptiness, but fullness beyond comprehension. Esoteric Christian traditions teach that this silence is the true doorway to resurrection, understood not merely as an event in history, but as a transformation of consciousness. Resurrection is awakening. It is the realization that life is not confined to form, personality, time, or fear of death. This is why silence has always been both feared and revered. It dismantles the illusion of separation at its deepest root. In authentic silence, you no longer experience yourself as isolated from God, from others, or from existence itself. The boundaries constructed by ego soften and eventually dissolve. Jesus embodied this unity completely. His life reveals that enlightenment is not escape from the world, nor rejection of the human experience, but radical presence within it. Silence does not remove you from life. It returns you to life as it truly is, before distortion, before fear, before fragmentation. The mystical path of silence is therefore not passive, gentle, or comfortable. It demands extraordinary courage. In silence, there is nowhere to hide. No belief system can protect you. No identity can shield you. No distraction can numb you. All illusions eventually surface to be seen clearly. This is why Jesus spoke of the narrow path. Silence narrows the path because it removes excess, false certainty, and borrowed meaning. It brings you face to face with reality, not as you wish it to be, but as it is. Throughout history, mystics across cultures and traditions have echoed this same realization. Scholars of comparative mysticism observe that silence appears universally at the summit of spiritual realization. Words belong to the journey. Silence belongs to arrival. This teaching was never meant to be fully institutionalized, controlled, or preserved only through doctrine. Silence cannot be organized. It cannot be owned. It cannot be enforced. It must be lived. This is why it survived through contemplatives, hermits, mystics, and inner lineages, rather than through authority structures alone. Jesus transmitted silence primarily through example. He showed what it means to live from the inside out, rooted in presence rather than performance. To walk this path does not require abandoning society or withdrawing permanently from relationships. Silence, in its deepest sense, is not about isolation. It is about freedom from compulsion. It is the ability to act without reactivity, to speak without ego, to listen without defense, and to remain grounded even in chaos. This is what esoteric Christianity refers to as Christ consciousness, not worship of an external figure, but participation in an inner state of being that Jesus embodied fully and invited others to discover within themselves. When silence becomes trusted, something profound begins to shift. Fear loses its authority. The need for control weakens. The constant demand for certainty dissolves. Instead of seeking answers obsessively, you begin to cultivate presence. This is not passivity, it is alignment. Actions that arise from silence carry a different quality. They are precise, compassionate, and unforced. They do not seek approval or domination. Jesus acted consistently from this inner stillness. This is why his presence transformed lives without coercion, argument, or force. Silence also reorders perception. In stillness, intuition becomes audible. Discernment sharpens. The difference between truth and illusion becomes clearer, not through analysis, but through resonance. Jesus trusted this inner guidance completely. He did not act from impulse or fear, but from attunement to a deeper intelligence. This is why his actions often appear inevitable, as though flowing from a source beyond personal will. The final revelation of the mystical path of silence is simple, but it is not easy. Silence is not the absence of truth. It is the condition that allows truth to reveal itself. When you stop filling every space with noise, opinion, explanation, and distraction, something ancient awakens within you. This is the same silence Jesus entered repeatedly throughout his life, the same silence from which compassion flows effortlessly, the same silence in which fear dissolves and clarity arises without effort. Now ask yourself, with complete honesty and without judgment, what would change in your life if you trusted silence more than noise? If you allowed stillness to guide you instead of fear? If you stopped searching endlessly outward and began listening inwardly? These questions are not meant to be answered verbally. They are meant to be lived moment by moment, breath by breath. The mystical path of Jesus does not end with belief, ritual, or explanation. It does not culminate in words. It culminates in silence, the living silence in which the divine and the human are no longer experienced as separate, and life is finally encountered as sacred. Thanks for looking.